our partners will be taking questions. So, thank you.
All right, good morning. Appreciate everyone being here. We're here to discuss Operation Summertime Blues that took place this past Tuesday and Wednesday here in the city. Our department has enjoyed and our community has really benefited from long-standing collaborations with many of our area law enforcement partners. Operation Summertime Blues was a partnership between the Lynchburg Police Department, the ATF, the Blue Ridge Regional Jail, the DEA, the FBI, and the U.S. Marshal Service. We are committed to addressing these issues through all available resources. All the issues we've been seeing in the community lately related to the uptick in violent crime, which obviously we're seeing across the nation. We rely on these partners to perform a variety of functions for us and to help us address the community concerns. Violent crime has no place in our city. We'll do everything we can and within our power to hold the perpetrators of these crimes accountable. We're proud of the hard work of the members of the LPD and our law enforcement partners for their dedication and hard work during this operation. Over the last 2 days, we arrested 18 people, serving 29 warrants, and addressing 65 criminal offenses with these arrests. Most of these people were wanted on outstanding warrants related to violent crime and drug offenses, which we know often go hand in hand. I want to recognize our partners in this effort. Starting to your left, my right, is the resident agent in charge at ATF, Keith Tehan. Next is Josh Salmon. He's the administrator of the Blue Ridge Regional Jail. Behind me, over here, is Joe Carucci, the resident agent in charge of the DEA. Next is Jason McCoy with the FBI. Next to him is Phil Alhusen. He's a supervisory senior resident agent with the FBI. And last is Tom Foster, who is a U.S. Marshal for the Western District of Virginia. We can't tell you how important it is to have these partnerships in our community as we continue to work to address violent crime here in Lynchburg. Lynchburg, like I said, is not unlike any other community in our nation. We're seeing an uptick in violent crime, and we want our community to know that we're going to address those issues using all the resources that we have possible and all the resources we have available to us. I want to thank the men and women of these agencies for their outstanding work and continued partnerships. These are long-term partnerships that we've enjoyed here in Lynchburg for many, many, many years. And when I talk to my fellow chiefs around the country and tell them about the relationships and the partnerships we have here in Lynchburg, they are unlike any other. Lynchburg is safer today because of the actions of the men and women from these organizations over the last 2 days, and we will continue to work with them as we address violent crime. This is a start to several things we're going to be doing this summer as a part of a violent crime initiative to make sure we're addressing the individuals who are responsible for these. However, for our city to remain safe, it's imperative that it's not just law enforcement taking action. We need the community's support, and you've heard me say that many times before. We need them to provide information on all crimes, but specifically on violent crime that we've been seeing here lately. We continue to struggle sometimes with witnesses and even victims to cooperate in some of the crimes we investigate. That has got to change if we're going to make a difference here in Lynchburg. So my challenge to everyone in our community is very simple. What would you want someone to do if it was your family member that was a victim of one of these crimes? And I think everybody could say very clearly they would want those individuals to come forward with that information. Our detectives, our officers, and all the law enforcement partners you see behind me will continue to put all the resources we have available towards these efforts. We will work night and day to try and bring those people responsible for these acts to justice, but we need the community's help to do that. At this time, I'd be more than happy to take any questions you have.
How long has this operation been in the works?
So this is something, we have regular meetings with our law enforcement partners, sometimes individually, sometimes collectively, both at the state and federal level. This is something that we've put into the works over the last several weeks. As a result of this, we put this together pretty quickly, and all the folks you see behind me were more than grateful. We were more than grateful, rather, that they were able to come forward quickly and help us with those resources.
And as chief, what made you decide to reach out to these partnerships? What made you see that this was needed for the community?
Well, the good thing is for a lot of these folks, I didn't have to reach out. They saw what was going on and they reached out to me. Again, we talk on a fairly regular basis on how we can collectively address what we're seeing, and not just Lynchburg, but crime doesn't have any boundaries, right? The criminals don't know they have to stop at the river and not go into another area. So we want to make sure that our folks are all working together collectively to address these things. And obviously we've seen an uptick in violent crime. Like I mentioned, we want to make sure that we put all the resources we have available to us. You've heard me say many times before, we continue to struggle with staffing here in Lynchburg, and that's not unique to us. That's across law enforcement, unfortunately, in today's day and age. So anytime we can pool our resources like we did for this operation and come into our community and help send a very clear message to folks, to the perpetrators, that you're not going to be able to commit these acts without being held accountable, and that we're going to make sure that you're brought to justice, and to our community members that are law-abiding citizens, that we're going to do everything we can to keep them safe.
How significant is staffing? I know you still have, I think, 16 officer positions open. How significant is staffing to the success of operations like this?
It's critical. It's absolutely critical. It takes a lot of people to come in and put together. Don't quote me on the numbers, but I think we had 6 teams of probably 5 to 6 law enforcement individuals over the last couple of days. So you're probably looking at between 30 to 35 law enforcement officers at least, plus other support staff that worked on putting this together. And so anytime we can bring in additional resources, obviously, with resources being challenged across the board, it's really important to bring those extra folks in to make an impact in the community.
I know you said this was an operation over the course of the past few weeks, but when do these events dates range from?
We could, Carrie, get that to you afterwards. Some of them are relatively new, some of them are older warrants, but again, all of them focused on some type of a violent crime and or drug offense.
Do any of these defendants have any connection that you guys could specify to Mr. Boykin's homicide or the Rash fires or some of the other crimes that us as the news media pay attention to the past few months?
Yes, I won't speak specifically to the events that are still under active investigation or unsolved at this time. Obviously, all of these folks had active warrants for them, and certainly anytime we arrest anyone, we try to make sure that we talk to them to make sure if they have any information related to those, or if for some reason we think they're involved in those, that we'll certainly ask those questions to make sure we gather the correct information.
Chief, we've seen a number of young people with guns and hard weapons. Where are these weapons coming from?
They're coming from a variety of places. I couldn't tell you specifically each one. We work with our partners at the ATF, obviously, to trace all these weapons anytime they come into our possession and see if we can track those back, and if there's appropriate charges that can be placed, we work with them to do that. I'll tell you very bluntly, a lot of the guns that we see out on the street are stolen out of vehicles that they are left in our community on a regular basis. I can't tell you how many times I see reports on a weekly basis of vehicles being broken into in our community and guns being stolen out of them. And if you're going to be a gun owner, we absolutely support you in doing that lawfully, but you have a responsibility that comes with that, and that is to secure that weapon in any vehicle overnight in the front of your house or in a street is not where you need to be securing a weapon.
Chief, some folks have called my office concerned about the research and all the work that went into these arrests, if you will. As you would imagine, some folks are saying they were arrested or seized unjustly and they were innocent. Could you talk about the work that went into some of these searches and seizures, if you will?
Yeah, so all of these individuals that were arrested had active warrants for them that were already outstanding prior to this operation. These are warrants that were either issued by a magistrate or in some cases by a judge or a court system because of failing to appear or something like that. So these have all been vetted through either the magistrate or through the court system to verify that the officers had probable cause to make these arrests. So this was just literally a warrant roundup or fugitive operation where we were tracking down individuals that already had active warrants for them that had been, again, issued by the courts or by the magistrate.
Chief, I noticed some of these counts are for things like marijuana, which is, as of today, legal, and simple possession charges. So since the department is short-staffed, why devote so many resources to things like this when there are several unsolved homicides in the city?
Yeah, so I think you're putting things a little bit out of context, Santiago, when you state that. I don't know that any of those were for simple possession of marijuana. If any of those say that, we'll certainly clarify that for you afterwards. But I think anything related to marijuana, and there was a distribution of marijuana, which is still, even as of July 1st, unlawful to distribute marijuana in the Commonwealth. And obviously, we're going to continue. We still have resources that are put in. Part of the reason we bring all of these resources in from outside law enforcement agencies to address things like this is because we have a lot of our folks that are still working on investigating those homicides. So the overwhelming majority of the individuals involved in this operation were not Lynchburg Police Department officers. They were our partners that you see behind me here.
Are there any updates in those unsolved homicides?
We're continuing to follow up on a lot of leads we have in and continue to come in. Our encouragement again to the community, and you hear me say this over and over again, but is we've got to have people come forward. We know factually that there are witnesses to some of these events, and there are individuals that have information that for whatever reason are unwilling to share that with us. And obviously we tell people all the time if they're not willing to come forward to be identified to do that, there are methods they have that they can report that information to us anonymously through Crime Stoppers, and we'd be more than happy to take that information. But we're continuing to follow up on all those leads to try and make sure we identify the perpetrators in those events and bring them to justice.
Chief, could you speak to the equity issue in terms of these seizures? Some people are asking, especially on social media, about whether or not some of these officials are going to communities of folks who are not African American, the Boonsboroughs and some of the other areas where they say drugs are being sold.
Yeah, so I can tell you that we vet all these documents and all these papers and arrest warrants before we go into them and look. We don't pick them out based on anything other than criminal offense. This is not something that is based on anything other than a criminal act and behavior. And certainly I know for a fact that the folks over the last 2 days were in all areas of the city looking for these individuals and even into the counties in some cases trying to track down these individuals.
A few more questions.
Do most people appear to be complying, or have we had any kind of resistance, any issues per se?
To my knowledge, I don't know that we had any issues. I think the overwhelming majority of these arrests were folks were taken into custody without any type of issue. Certainly, if any of that information I'm not aware of, I can relate to you afterwards. But part of the reason we bring such a large number of folks in here to serve these warrants is we want to do it safely for both the officers as well as for the arrestees. Right, our goal is to just take people into custody safely and then bring them in front of the court system so they can have their day in court.
Last question.
What would you say to the community who simply wants to say thank you? We talked to some people yesterday when they heard of these seizures, and some, especially the elderly, are just saying thank you to these folks who are making these arrests, if you will, to keep the community safe.
Yeah, no, that goes a long way. You've heard me say that the best thing that anybody in this community can do for any of our officers or any of the staff from the people you see behind me here is just to tell them thank you. These men and women do an incredible job. They're doing it under very difficult circumstances in today's day and age. They're being challenged and questioned on literally almost everything they do, and they're still out there dedicated to the safety of this community. So we appreciate the feedback. We certainly appreciate the support of our community, and our men and women will continue to do what they can to keep everyone safe. So we thank all of you. Thank you for your time. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you all for coming, and like I said, I will email you all the names of our federal partners who are up here as well as their titles, and if you have any other questions, please shoot me an email. Thank you.